So, welcome to the Advanced Software Design module. And last time we were discussing about, user interfaces as well as consider user requirements and the importance of giving importance to users in, software development and as an active participant. So today's session, I'm going to talk about outsourcing decision, which means like the decision of whether you are going to build a system in your own or you are going to give it to somebody else, like contracting, give somebody else to, develop the information system, right? Okay. Now, when we are going to first, talk about this outsourcing decision, it's a crucial decision because as an organization, sometimes depend on your requirement, you have to decide whether you are going to build your own information system or you are going to give it to somebody else. So usually there'll be three phases are there. The first one we call analysis and evaluation of outsourcing decision. And then once you perform that analysis and evaluation, you have to assess the needs and vendors. Vendors mean like if you are giving to somebody else, there could be several, people which we call vendors. So we have to select the vendors. And then the next part would be the third phase is called implementation and management, which means you have to make sure that when you outsource your work, whether it's actually delivered with the required functionality. So that is what we call implementation and management. Right. Now let's go phase by phase. As I told you earlier, when it comes to deciding outsourcing, the first phase is known as analysis and evaluation. Right. Now, first of all, you need to identify organization goals and core competencies. Like, remember that this information system for a particular organization. An organization should have their own goals. And they have to have their own core competencies, right? Okay, now let me ask a small question from the audience. You can either speak or you can type in the chat. Now let's take a university. So what are the goals of the university? Yes? What are the goals of the university? Kavindhu Laksha, what do you think? Any organization, you have to have a goal. Exactly, good. I mean, one answer I got from Hima. Yes, one of the goals could be fulfilling the student requirements. Good point. Any others? Apinash, Shehan, Yanuli? What else? Let's take a university. And what do you think? What are the organization goals are? Yes. For example, SLTC, we used to say that it's a research university, which means we want to inculcate the research culture within our undergraduates. So which could be another possible organization, right? So likewise, any other organization, you have to have, different organization goals. Then the core competencies means like what are the competencies they possess, like for example, when it comes to university, they should teach research for undergraduate students, one of the core competencies. Because we build information system to support these, to support the goal. Now, for example, we have to have an information system to fulfill the student requirements. right? So already we have some, right? We have SIMs, we have LMS, we have different information systems are there, but not for everything, right? You know that some parts are we are doing in manual. Some already we have information system which we can automate, right? So, so the first, as within the phase one, under the analysis and evaluation, you start with organization goals and core competencies. Then you are going to compare how much cost you are going to use, like how much costs it's need if you are going to build in-house. Now, in-house means if you take a SLDC, for example, we have our own IT unit, then some members are actually developing SIMs, like some components are, in-house developments, right? Now, outsourcing means you are going to give this to somebody else, right? Subcontracting, or you are going to, purchase some licenses, right? For some already available software. So now you have to look at for the costs. Now, when you think about the cost, it's not just the development cost. You have to think about the long-term costs. So long-term means like, for example, when you develop information system, so you need initially you will have to spend some time on staff for developers, and then after that, after finishing that one, you have to think about the maintaining it. Right, maintenance means like there will be feature requests, there are technological, changes. So you have to think about the long-term costs when you're thinking about, comparison. And you have to assess the criticality of the functions and activities. Now, for example, if you take like examination results. So you already know that we have in our already, build the information system, we can upload the results, right? So delivering the results on time is one of the critical functions of a university, right? So you have to think about the criticality of the function, right? So those are the things we should consider in the phase one, right? So starting from the organization goals and core competencies, we have to compare different costs that you need to build in-house and outsource. And then you look at criticality of the function and activities. And when you're considering the cost, you have to focus on the long-term costs, investments, work morale, and also the support. So this is what we call the phase one. Right. Now, next, the phase two, needs assessment, right? Now, you know that when you want to, outsource your information system, you need to, create what we call request for proposal. In short, we say RFP. So what RFP means, your requirements we put into a proposal, and then these proposals are, send it to the vendors, the possible contractors, you may say, and then you can compare them, right? So we have to look for the request for proposal. You have to develop it, and then your structure should be easy, because when you get the answers from different vendors, different software providers, we may say, right? We need to, easy to assess them. Now, when you assess them, you can focus on the technology, right? So, for example, what technologies these vendors are possessing, right? Whether they are focusing on traditional technology, which is consistent, or whether they are focused on the cutting edge, the latest ones. Then you have to evaluate their financial stability, right? How stable they are, right? Because like for the development, for example, initially, sometimes they have to have some funding to start with, right? So we have to focus on their financial stability. Now, usually we talk about the bonds, like when when vendors apply for proposal for information system, we will ask them to make a bond so that if they fail to meet their requirements, we may not release the bonds. Then the third one is track record, how successful they are, like what are the information systems they have already developed. So if for example, if you're taking a particular information system from a particular vendor, we can check whether they have delivered similar software in other universities. So you can look for their track record, which gives you an indication how comfortable they are with the requirement. And finally, the customer support, very important. Now, usually when we subcontract or when you give outsource information system, whenever issue arises, we need to contact them. So the service they provide, we call customer support, and that also one of the key, aspect of when you're evaluating vendors. And then, as the last part, we have to negotiate the contract, and also we need to define what service levels and performance measures, right? Now, for example, you have to have a contract because when something goes wrong, we have to have some written document to refer with. And we have to say what kind of a service that we need from them and whether they actually delivered it. For example, let's say if there's a breakdown, we can say that, okay, they should respond within 24 hours, right? And depend on the criticality of the function. So the performance means performance measurement criteria means how many hours they took to resolve the issue or how many days they took to resolve a particular issue. So all these you have to define, initially before you start, right? All these should be decided in the beginning, not at the very large, very late, stage. Right. Okay, so let's move to the third one. Now, the third one is you select a vendor and then you ask them to provide the service. So during the implementation, once you have selected the vendor, you have to define the tasks, right? That means, let's say you are developing a piece of software. So that could be one particular task. And then you can test and debug any errors, issues within the software, which could be another task. And for each task, we have to have some time frame, right? So when we have a task, we have to assign a suitable a time frame to finish the task. Right. Now, the next thing is once you define it, you have to monitor and evaluate performance during the deployment as a development and implementation. So when you evaluate, you have to think about it both ways, right? Monitor and evaluate performance during the development and after implementation. And when we have this, most important skills that we need is what we call prompt communication. And also the resolution of issues, right? How do you solve when you have, and then we can also look at horizontal and vertical factors. So when you talk about the horizontal and vertical factors, we can think of, different aspects, right? So for example, when we say horizontal factor, let's say they take the decision to outsource, and then the horizontal process, they define the work, they can select a vendor and manage the delivery. So this is what we call day-to-day, right? Vertical means in depth you can go, right? You can focus on a detail. right? So then we can have different levels. So then we can talk about the vertical integration. Right. Now let's look at some example, right? Okay, just to summarize what we discussed so far, outsourcing decision, you need a structured approach for best outcomes, which means you have to have a structure's way of selecting this. We discussed there are 3 phases. And then thoroughly assess needs, your requirement. You have to compare the costs, and then you have to evaluate the vendors. And when you're doing so, make sure that you have clear communication. There should be a way to performance monitoring, and also you have to have a contract for successful outsourcing relationship. Right. Now, let's take an example. This example is from the textbook. Actually, this particular website is not available right now, but they were talking about how accessory store, a store similar to Amazon, for example, e-commerce website, and then what they did is they actually outsourced to a company called e-commerce, where they provide function to similar companies, right? And to do that, they were focusing on their core competencies, such as, like, if you take e-commerce website, maybe one of the core competencies may be selecting different products, right? Okay, now when you look at that, when you're outsourcing, there are many things you need to consider. For example, there could be some legal issues, right? Now, what do you mean by legal issues? Right? So, for example, there could be some copyright infringement of when you're using images and text. Now, for example, you are not allowed to use anyone's image, copyrighted image, without written permission or without getting approval, right? So you need to think about all these. They are called legal issues. Otherwise, what will happen? Let's say you develop a website and you use unauthorized material like pictures. You just download and use them. Somebody can go to courts and put legal actions against you. So you have to be very careful. Then the second one is called regulatory issues. Right now, for example, if you take Sri Lanka, for example, right now we have taxes for the goods, but sometimes these taxes are not applicable if you order online, right? But at some point, people may answer that right now it is not, online tradings are not taxed, right? So you have to think about in those terms. For example, online gambling, like you play games for money, usually we say it's prohibited, right? So so those are comes under regulatory issues, right? Then the third one, right? So the third one is called security. Right now, security means, for example, let's say you build an e-commerce website. You will open doors for more customers. Anybody can come into your website and make purchases. But at the same time, there are others like hackers or crackers, right? Because they can, take over the organization, their website. So you have to make sure that it will not happen. Right. Okay, so that's about the security aspect of it. Then the next one is we call staffing. Right now, when you say staff, For example, e-business, you have to have somebody work on this. So which means 24/7 by 52, right? So you can issues like this which comes under staffing issue. Then we have system usability, right? For example, when you build a system, whether it's usable. Then we have system functionality, right? We can focus on the functionality, right? Different website, their scope will be different. Some website try to capture everything that you have, but some focus only on one particular now let's say when you take a particular website, if they are offering different functionality, whether we can implement everything in to provide the functionality. And then system reliability. For example, let me give you an example like this. So for example, when you have websites, there are sometimes we have links which will not work. When you click it, it will not work. You have to be very careful. We call bad links sometimes. Right? So that comes under system reliability. Then we have system integration. Right? So integration means you develop a system and then you should incorporate into current system. So that is what we call system integration. And then meaningful matrices. So that means creating an information system, it's not an easy task and it's not cheap as well. You have to spend quite a lot of money on building a system. And if you do not understand how to use them, then there will be an issue. Last one, costs. Right? When you say cost, there could be many things. There could be hidden cost, there could be unexpected cost. It could be any of this, right? The cost could be for hardware, software, as well as communications, and even when you are recruiting new staff. Right. Okay. Another small question before I move on to next one. Now, according to your experience, being in this field for some time, what is the cost that you need to spend to create a website? Yes, you can just make a guess. I'm waiting for your answers. Right. Now the question is like, how much you need to spend on this. The cost that you will see in this slide is actually based on the IBM website. They had about like 10,000 pages, and they talk about depend on the size of the website. If it is a large site, they say about like $6 million. So that if for 2 years of development. Medium size, it's about like they say about $2 million over 2 years, and small side about 500,000 over 2 years. And then if you're using an internet service provider, and as Tharindu mentioned, right? Okay, Tharindu mentioned, so you have to spend a cost for hosting, domain registration, right? The main some costs are put it here, like again, VeriSign This is in around like 2004. The book has been written, so the cost were around like $376 per month for monthly service, the file storage, data transfer fees, and so on, right? And then Shokini.com, and they say the site is for $10 per month as a fixed one. But the web design part is a separate cost. This is for, basically hosting, domain registration, and management. And then, as I told you earlier, like the web design cost is a separate cost. So for web design, you have to pay separate. So according to the textbook, if it is a 10-page site, it's about like $2,000. For 25-page site is about like $10,000, right? And depend on high end for middle-sized business, it could be even go up to as $50,000, right? So I just checked, some same for Sri Lanka. These are rough estimate, not very accurate one, just to give you some idea about like website design cost. If it is like 10-page, might start from 50,000 to 100,000. If it is really getting large, about like 25-page, might be 150,000 to 300,000. Or if it is a high-end site for mid-sized business, could be 500,000 to 1 million, right? And I told you like these could be some rough estimate because it depends on who designs the website as well as design expertise. If you're a novel designer, the cost could be very minimal, but if you just experienced designer, you have to spend quite a lot of money. And the second point is the cost is also attached to project complexity. So if it is a really complex project, then the cost will be high. And also like depend on what additional features that you are requesting. Right now, when you're going to have your own system, we could have our own set of hardware like computers, operating systems, or software, modems, other connectivity hardware, as well as communication. So you have to spend quite a lot of money. Plus any labor costs. The equipment is one, the other one is labors, right? So if you want to spend like average cost or technical expertise, according to the book is about like $60,000 per year. And those who actually authoring web pages, it could go from $30 to $150 per hour. Right now, here are the labor cost in our context. So if we are an entry-level web developer, your salary or your work may vary about like 30,000 to 50,000. If you are with a little bit of experience, then it could go from 50,000 to 100,000 per month. For a senior developer, it could be 100,000 to 200,000. And the web designer, it's a separate one. Usually you will get about 40,000 to 8,000 per month. And as we discussed earlier as well, these costs you have may vary based on the experience, whatever the skills that you are possessing, and also the demand from the industry. Right. Right. Now that we talk about this, the different costs involved, we have to still want to make a decision on whether we are going to outsource or we are going to build in-house. So when you're estimating cost, you have to focus on the site requirement and the functionality. Right. Okay. So as I told you earlier, the cost we have to decide based on your requirement and also the functionality. And then we have to work on RFP. When we talk about RFP, we got request for proposal. So, and this is what we are going to compare the different vendors, right? So you can actually send this RFP to web hosting companies, because once you do that, only you will get with their uh, values. And then when we have the bidding process, which means you are getting different amounts for the particular task at hand, we call a bid. And IT department is usually involved in the process. Right. Now let me ask a small question, right? Again from you. Now, what do you think? Let's say we want to build a system to handle or monitor student performance, right? So are you going to develop in-house or are you going to outsource it? Yes. Let's say we take your results, right? Let's say we need the information system keep track of your the results, right? The post details as well as your performance. So are we going to build it in-house or are we going to, outsource? And how do you make the decision? Let's say you are asked to make the decision. How are you going to make that decision? Yes. Any ideas? Okay, so let me get back to again the slides. Now, when you're making a decision of should you outsource, right? That means you are going from traditional business model to electronic business model. So that is you need the commitment, which means there are many things that we can to focus on. Right? And the decision of outsourcing is what we call individual decision, depend on what organization needs. Right. Okay. Now, the first thing that you need to think about the outsourcing, like what advantages you might get by outsourcing the development of information system. The first one is the price. The cost is very low, right? If you are going to develop a system in your own, right? So it was cost effective if you outsource this. And then on the other hand, outsourcing will give you another advantage. You will get the expertise, right? Because as an organization, you might not have the required the knowledge and experience to, create in-house development. So that is another thing. You get the expertise from that. And then, so since we have outsources handle hardware software upgrade, which you don't have to spend time. Security, when you outsource, you might get, robot encryption, protection, backup, and also disaster recovery. What might happen if you do in-house, you have to take care of everything. Right? And sometimes you might get it as a complete solution, right? Hosting, designing, maintenance, everything could be done in one single place. Right? Now, let's say if you are a design, you need somebody to host your website. But what if somebody is doing everything, the hosting, designing, and maintenance, the cost will be cheaper, right? So we can say it's a complete solution you are getting. The next one is scalability. Now, when you have growing up, right? And then it's easy to handle the complexity. Let's say the number of users who are using the system has increased. No issue. You can easily scale your website, right? And also the function. Right, next. Now, there are a couple of disadvantages if you're using outsourcing. There could be hidden charges, which means sometimes when you build the system, you don't know what cost will be added in future, right? So when you outsource, there could be some hidden charges, additional fees, exceeding quotas, for example. Yeah, one example, right? And then you have to handle their own set of rules, outsources policies, timeliness. There could be delays if the outsource workload is high. Then we have mergers and acquisitions. Onset of outsource is acquired. Acquired means somebody nowadays will build the company, and if it is successful, somebody else can acquire it. So that is also another concern. Right. Now to summarize our outsourcing decision. Outsourcing, we have already seen there are advantages and there are disadvantages. And then you have to compare them critically and make the decision. But we need to discuss is whether you are going to build it in-house or outsourcing should include informed decision. You have to think about the different costs and advantages you are getting, right? Compare, then you should make a decision. Right. Now, in section, we are going to discuss how or what questions we should ask from potential outsource companies. Right? Here are some questions. What capabilities do you offer and what prices? Like, for example, domain registration, hosting, everything together. So what are the prices? And sometimes we can also ask, like, we have a set of requirements. Yeah? And then they can say whether they are capable of providing everything. Then the level of expertise. So how do you do that? Usually you can demonstrate what we call portfolio and websites and different levels of sophistication. Third question, how long have you been in business? This is again very important, just to see how capable they are. Provide 3 references. Okay, what are your sales? The turnover, it's very important to get an understanding. Right? And then finally, you can refer somebody else. And the next one is actually on their communication skills. Like, how quickly do you respond to email or telephone? And how do you, save your service? If it is a physical location, you can lock it, right? Are you available in 24/7? Sometimes you will see this as 24/7 into 365. What type of disaster recovery services do you provide? Like when something goes wrong, the heart which burnout, right? Change of data. Right? So what are the necessaries recoveries they provide? And then often you need to improve your infrastructure. So you can ask how often do you upgrade your hardware and software? Again, very important idea. Right, given that, can you come up with something similar to this? There are many others, but let's look at something similar to this. Right. So now, the next set of questions is if they're using some dial-up lines or outsource servers, can they get online without busy signals? Can the staff members use local telephone numbers to dial on the network? So some of the questions you can ask. What are the speed and capacity of hosting company linked to the internet? Will the hosting company accept large file transfers? Will the hosting company permit email broadcasting? So this set of questions you can ask from outsourcing companies. Right. Now, let's look at some models. So in this case, we are going to look at some models based on how you perform outsourcing. The first one in-house. The second one we call full outsourcing. Third one we call partial outsourcing. Now, in-house development is suitable if you have a very large company. Now, if you take, for example, Amazon, they are also have e-commerce website, but they have mainly in-house development. They have used actually in-house model. Right? So company like Amazon, they have their own because it's very complex and they have millions of billions of customers worldwide. So they can, work on this. And then it could be more cost beneficial when you compare with other alternatives, right? In-house might be better, especially for large company. Now let's look at the three models: in-house, full outsource, and partial outsource. Right. Yes, full outsource model. So that means when you're developing an information system, the entire work, entire development, you can give it to outsourcing company. Right? That is what we call full outsource. Everything you give it to somebody else. The complete website, right? So comes under this full outsource model. Then the last one we call partial outsource model. We can host our own servers, and then you can have a consultant to program them. The second option is you can outsource the server hosting, but programming part could be done in-house. Right? And third one, hosting your services. And then you can purchase third-party software packages to run those services. So this is called partial outsourcing. Right. Okay. So this is what I want to discuss for today's session. So the theory part we have finished. The next one is we can have a group work based on this. So first of all, yeah, let me share the slides with you because you need them for the next one. Right. Okay. Um, so this is an outline of identifying what will be the costs. Right. Now, as you can see here, what you see in this diagram is see the table is the cost for a website and how much it will cost. For example, number of pages of text is one feature, and names and location, number of images, their location, whether you have to have altered number of animations, their locations, right? Then design information, different kind of documents that you can store, like PDF, doc, PowerPoint, Wave, and so on, right? The next question is actually on videos, which software package you are using. Whether you need to create the files now, or whether you have already created, whether you need a script, SSL, then we have do you require encryption or do you require digital certificates? What levels of security you need? How many email accounts you need? Will you need email routing? Will you need autoresponders? Will you need a shopping cart that is services for online purchases? And then things like, do you already have a product information, chat room, multi-room, guest book, feedback room, activity? And then you need banner creations, right? What are the other websites that we are going to link? Whether you need some database lookup, but it means like you connect to the database and get the required info. Visitor registration program. Outsourcing, is it internal or outdoor? Right. So these are like some of the indicators that you can consider of. Right. Now, here is what I want to do. You have to think about an organization, and then you have to decide on their aims. Right? And then you performs 3 phases that we have discussed in the beginning: analysis and evaluation, vendor selection, implementation, and management. Right? So we can divide you into smaller groups, and you can select a company and identify goals and core competencies. And then you have to decide which development technique you are going to use, whether you are going to use in-house or outsourcing, right? right? So the first one, task one, I have actually put in the WhatsApp. What you need to do is you identify company goals and core competencies, and then outsourcing needs, right? Then decide whether you are going to use in-house or outsourcing, right? You have to select one organization that you can actually think about it, right? That's the task one. Okay, so I'm going to assign you in tasks. So in this particular case, I'm going to create breakout groups. Yes, let me put you in 3 groups. Right, please join the rooms and starting working on task one. I'll give you say 10 minutes. Let's start. Okay, so I have assigned breakout rooms. Please work on the task one. I have posted in the fields, WhatsApp.